Life is short, so am I. So my speech today is going to be very short. Thank you for your time. See you. Okay, before I really start, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me down, because like many of you seated here, I could never imagine myself standing up here to share my story and my discoveries with you today. So I want to thank you again, for I'm really honored and humbled to be able to share the story today. I'm Tse-En and I'm 20 this year, and I'm from SMU School of Social Sciences. And outside my studies, I'm a youth corps advocate where I share the good community work done by Youth Corps Singapore. So from a very young age, I realized that I was different. And how so? So when I was in the public, I realized that people were staring at me. And it wasn't those simple glance, where the eyes just look for 1 second and then it turns away. But it was the long stare, and people were just following you as you go. So when I moved to the right, people's heads turned, the eyes also turned, right? And I started to realize that, there were a lot of eyes on me, and sometimes it came along with finger pointing. So obviously they were referring to me and not somebody behind me or some imaginary person, right? And I was wondering, why do people view me differently? Why is there all this staring? And the question that came up to me was, what is wrong with me? Why are people viewing me in a different way? And it was an emotional struggle that I went through when I was young, because I realized that I was very different, and people also viewed me in a different way. And we know how we tend to gain our value from the way people see us, right? And if this is so, when people view you in a different way, does it mean that you have no value at all? I also had my fair share of physical challenges. So as you can tell, I'm short, right? So what does this mean? This means that when I'm in class, I was always relegated to the front row of the class, lest I get blocked. And also, I cannot do all the hanky-panky and monkey business with my friends at the back of the class, right? And moving around was slightly difficult for me because of how my legs are so short. I couldn't climb the stairs. So how did I climb down the stairs? First I would sit down on the step, right? My bum on the higher step, and then I would slide down from step to step to step, right? So this was my fair share of physical challenges that I also went through because of my physical condition. But despite all of that, right, even though I had all these conditions, with love and encouragement from my family, friends, my school teachers like Mr. Larry Choi and other people, right, I realized that, actually I had value. And also partly because I was a Christian myself, right, where they say that Jesus loves the little children. And that's when I realized, that even though I may have some inadequacies, even though my condition might be different from people, right, I still had a value to a divine being. And so this sort of made me realize, that even though others may view me in a very different way, right, it was that I actually had value. And because I had value, I did not need to wallow in self-pity over my condition or the differences that I have. And there was no need for self-pity at all, right? Because I could actually define who I am and choose who I want to be. I did not need to depend on the value that others place upon me, but I could just use the value that I see of myself. So like many of you here, I'm sure you are preparing for your CT2s or mid-years, right? And you are bound to face some challenges, some setbacks. And likewise, I've gone through it also, having been through VJ myself. And I'd like to urge you today that, even though you may face some difficulties, even though you may not do as well as you expect, right? It doesn't really matter, because that is not the value that you have. The value you have of yourself is how you want to see yourself. The value that you have is how you imagine yourself to be, and not what your grades or other people might define you, right? So because I realized I had value, a question came up, which was that, who do I want to be? Right. I realized that, who do I want to be? I realized that because I was different from people, right, there was no need for me to limit myself or my experiences. I should just take life as it throws at me and just embrace all that life has to offer. So when I was in VJ, after all, life is short, so why not have a taste for all that life has to offer? So when I was in VJ in my second year, I was actually in the Malay Cultural Society. How many of you here from MCS? Ooh. How many of you here from ICS? No one, right? So initially it was because I was tamjiak, or very greedy. You know, during Ramadan, when they fast, then they break fast, then there's a big feast of all the delicious Malay food. So initially that was the reason why I joined Malay Culture Society, because the food is just so good. It was just so delicious. But looking at a deeper note, I realized that, you know, being from a Chinese race, being from a majority race, I would never be able to understand how is it like to be from a minority race, right? And myself being a minority condition, right? How would it like to be, how would it be like for other minority conditions, right? And so actually I joined also, on a deeper note, I joined Malay Culture Society to get to know why the Singaporean Malay community is so tightly knitted, even though they're the minority race, and through various interactions with them, doing activities with them, I realized, you know, that actually we can have empathy for one another, you know, and that actually developed a sense of empathy in me, not just for other races, but also for other conditions. So whether you are blind, whether you're autistic, whether you have no legs, no arms, right, is that ultimately we still can empathize with one another so long we are open to diversity, open to new ideas, and not choose to view things in a very normal way. So when I was preparing for today's sharing, right, I talked to all my friends and I talked to my family members, and then I shared with them valuable anecdotes, vulnerable narratives, and I listened to them, and I realized, you know, that actually we're all living a fairy tale. You know, that if you look back on your life, you can never imagine the things that you have done or the things that you have achieved in hindsight, right? And that every one of us is a living fairy tale. Similar stories, but not identical, right? And that actually our living fairy tale is a summation of stories of positivity, triumph, sadness, pain, endurance, and even happiness, right? And through it all, why is it that we have all the similar stories? Why is it that our life is same but different? It's because at the heart of it, we all have the human spirit inside us, right? And the human spirit is actually what can really push us forward. So I'd like to bring you back to how I started, right? Like many of you here, I was sitting there before and could never imagine myself standing here, right? But then you realize that actually every day we're discovering something. And what is TED all about? Stories, right? What else? Cannot hear you. TED is basically about discovering new things and sharing ideas. Am I right? Don't kill me, it's just my guess. Right, so TED is about discovering ideas, and likewise, we are discovering a lot of things about others, right? We are discovering things about our friends and family members, right? But beyond that, do we just stop at discovering? And before I close, I'm going to share with you a final story. So about a year ago, I was featured in local mainstream media for my physical condition and my positive outlook to life, right? 早报, 晚报, newspaper, and all that. I'd like to thank Mr. Choi for helping me with this. And it was an adventure being featured on the newspaper. You know, you see people reading newspaper article of you in the bus. Then you're like standing in front of them, or like at a kopitiam, you're eating a plate of char kway teow, and then they are like, ooh, 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 you know. And so some of them realized that they were reading about me. They came up to shake my hand and encourage me, congratulating me for my results and how I was an inspiration to many. But there were no selfies. I'm not Mr. Lee Hsien Loong. And so it was quite fun, but I realized that, you know, after all of this is over, I realized that actually people felt that they were inspired by my story, right? And actually my life story is powerful, right? But that even though actually I live a life that is very similar to all of you, right? I do similar things with all of you. I went to VJ also, right? I play soccer, I did A-levels, I endured the prelims, you know, and so forth. And actually all of us, right, we can actually be TED speakers, right? But how can we go beyond just, how can we go towards that? Is that beyond just discovering things about others, right? Why don't we encourage and affirm our friends for it? So let's say if someone did something very great, why don't we tell the person that I'm inspired by you, right? That you was glad knowing you, instead of just keeping it to ourselves, right? And through actually encouraging and affirming one another and realizing that actually we are all TED speakers, we are all an inspiration, we are all full of color, right? That we ourselves actually can be inspired by ourselves, and that there's actually not a need to really be inspired by others, right? For after all, life is short, so am I. Life is short, so are yours. Why not give it a go? Thank you.